Hi guys, this is Mishel, Deception Bytes, and it is July 12th. Still, I had to look. Am I ashamed about having to look? Maybe a little. Okay, it's 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm not bringing you Q, but I am bringing you Q-related news. I have done one video tonight, but I have more than enough stuff to do another video. And even though I'm risking it because it's 10:46 p.m. and I do get punch drunk after a certain time of night, I'm going to attempt it anyway. So let's get going. Have some interesting stuff to share. Let's start off with this little nugget. Come on. Hamsters are slow tonight. All right. 3 attorneys found dead in Wasserman Schultz, Florida district in 2 weeks. Fearing for his life as colleagues and attorneys drop dead around him, DNC fraud lawsuit attorney seeks protection order from court, citing dead lawyers Seth Rich's unsolved murder and Sean Lucas' untimely death. This is interesting. Of course, this is Debbie Wasserman Schultz here. And 3 high-profile attorneys have been found dead in Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Florida district in the last 2 weeks, prompting the plaintiff in the massive DNC fraud lawsuit being held in Florida to request protection from the court for the plaintiffs, their witnesses, and their families. While the DNC fraud lawsuit has been hit with a mainstream media blackout, the case continues to unravel the corruption at the heart of the Democratic National Committee. And with the discovery phase still to come, the skeletons in the DNC's closet have never been closer to receiving a disinfecting dose of sunlight. That would be nice. Jared Beck, attorney for the plaintiffs in the DNC fraud lawsuit taking place in Miami, uploaded a video Tuesday in which he thanked supporters for offering their concerns, prayers, and support in the wake of the recent disturbing murders. After much consideration and deliberation, we have decided it's time to bring these concerns to the court's attention. Today, we filed a motion to Judge William Gislok to issue an order providing for the protection of the plaintiffs and their families, as well as all potential witnesses in the DNC fraud lawsuit. In support of this motion, we have cited the following events: the untimely death of our process server, Sean Lucas, the unsolved murder of DNC employee Seth Rich. We believe Mr. Rich might have been a potential witness in this case. We have also cited the recent untimely death of federal prosecutor Baranton Wisenant in South Florida. Also, recent bizarre and disturbing conduct, including threats that had been directed at plaintiffs, their counsel, and employees. And we have also cited an offer to provide security by the Oath Keepers and its president, Stuart Rose. The motion, published on the Beck's website, Jam-Pack, included the declaration of a plaintiff in the suit describing allegations that her laptop had been tampered with, allegedly by an individual who had illegally entered her home. The huge class action fraud lawsuit against the Democratic National Committee keeps getting weirder, and it now involves the Capitol Police. Today's announcement comes after the Becks had reported receiving a creepy anonymous phone call from someone using a voice changer. After a Google search, the Becks found the caller ID number matched that of former DNC chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz at Ventura office. Excuse me. Now, that's interesting. So, Bex had reported receiving a creepy anonymous phone call. Now, that person was using a voice changer. Now, they use a Google search for the caller ID, and it comes back to Debbie Wasserman Schultz at Ventura office. Now, of course, that does not necessarily mean that it's Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I'm sure then that there are more than just herself in the office, but it somehow points to her, obviously, if it's coming from a place that she owns or rents and it's her ID, obviously she is implicated. If it's not her, then definitely someone connected to her. So that's interesting. According to attorney Elizabeth Lee Beck, at 4:54 p.m. today, June 1st, an individual called our law office from 305-936-5724. That number is the contact phone number for Wasserman Schultz Adventura office in Florida. My secretary stated that it sounded like the caller was using a voice changer because the voice sounded robotic and genderless, along the lines of the voice changers used when television show interviews are kept anonymous. Beck continued. The call concluded with okie dokie after my secretary gave the caller public information about the case. After the call ended, a simple Google search of the phone number 305-936-5724 shows that it is the phone number for Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz Adventura office. What just occurred is highly irregular, and we will be filing the instant email with the court forthwith. Yeah, that's a little weird. Actually, it's a lot weird. But let's continue. Now, this I found very interesting and in a positive. It's positive. Trump lays groundwork to ban mandatory vaccinations across U.S. Now, I don't know how you feel about vaccinations, but I know that there are many of us that are awake that are against vaccinations for various reasons. I guess that will be for those of us who are against vaccinations. And I do not want to enter into a discussion about vaccinations because this really isn't. Sure, this little bit is about vaccinations, but I mean, we could argue about this all day long. Let's just let it be about this, that he's laying the groundwork to ban mandatory vaccinations. President Trump has created a new division within the Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights with the express purpose of banning mandatory vaccinations across the country and ensuring citizens have a right to choose their own health care. With the establishment of the Conscious and Religious Freedom Division on Thursday, Trump has laid the groundwork to dismantle each and every vaccine mandate across the country. Big Pharma's chokehold on the nation's health has been released. If you don't think this new division at the Health and Human Services Office is a big deal, it's time to think again. The Conscious and Religious Freedom Division gives many different groups a big tent under which to fight for our constitutional rights. Christians and libertarians, as well as free thinkers and people of other religious faiths, have a common interest in fighting against Big Pharma's corrupt health establishment. And I want to say right now, a lot of times people will say, oh, no, all the children have to be vaccinated because if your child's not vaccinated, then they're a risk to my child. Well, I always thought about that, and I always thought, like, okay, I don't understand these people thinking, because if, let's say my child is not vaccinated, well, how is my child a risk to your child if your child is vaccinated? Right? The unvaccinated would only be at risk to other unvaccinated children. So if you're for vaccinations and you vaccinate your child, fine. If I'm against vaccinations and I don't vaccinate my child, well, my child's not a risk to your child. My child is only a risk to other and unvaccinated children, right? Well, that's how I think anyway. So mainstream media are desperate to keep this news quiet. They don't want you to know that the president is working to ensure American citizens have a right to choose their own health care. Pharmaceutical companies provide mainstream media outlets with a huge percentage of their advertising revenue. Big pharmaceutical companies actually spend far more on advertising than research. We are talking hundreds of billions of dollars. Here's why this is such a big deal. Per Boland report, the House Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, is one of the key figures who got this project over the line. Do you think he is unaware of the draconian mandatory vaccine law in California, which took away religious and philosophical conscience exemptions? This new division at HHS is a home run for all those who believe in liberty and health freedom. In a press release put out on Thursday by the HHS Office for Civil Rights, Director Roger Severino said law protecting religious freedom and conscious rights are just empty words on paper if they aren't enforced. No one should be forced to choose between helping sick people and living by one's deepest moral or religious convictions, and the new division will help guarantee that victims of unlawful discrimination find justice. For too long, governments big and small have treated conscience claims with hostility instead of protection. But change is coming, and it begins here and now. In an article for Town Hall, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy was very explicit. In the past, this office sent the message, now is not the time for freedom. It is time for you to conform. What a difference 1 year makes. Dr. Everett Piper of Oklahoma Wesleyan University echoed these comments and brought a laugh to the group by noting what a difference it was to be thanking Health and Human Services rather than suing them. And interesting, it says related CDC doctor, disastrous flu shot causing deadly flu epidemic. I had read that actually other places and had wanted to comment on it and perhaps will in the future. The acting Health and Human Services Secretary, Eric Hargan, also had some remarkable words. For too many of these healthcare practitioners have been bullied and discriminated against because of their religious beliefs and moral convictions, leaving many of them to wonder whether they have a future in our healthcare system. When faithful Americans are bullied out of the public square and out of public service, when bigotry is allowed to flourish, we all lose. The new website for the Conscious and Religious Freedom Division even has a convenient portal to file a complaint, and they are encouraging anyone who feels their religious rights or conscience have been violated to file a complaint. What about all those California parents living under the mandatory childhood vaccine law? Aren't their religious and conscious rights being violated? President Trump has given us a tool to use against tyranny. My dear brothers and sisters, it is time to pick up this weapon and use it against our common enemy. Well, I am someone that has been against vaccinations for a very long time. Not against vaccinations per se, but against mandatory vaccinations. And I'll tell you something else. I have 2 cats that I rescued that were never vaccinated. I never had them vaccinated against rabies because they were inside cats and were never ever outside. So I didn't vaccinate them against anything. And they are, one is 20, one is 21, just about 21. So the only time they were ever vaccinated was when they had to cross the U.S.-Canadian border. And since that time, they've had issues. Now, a lot of people say, oh, it's probably old age. But I just know that they were absolutely perfectly healthy until I vaccinated them. And it's only because I was forced to vaccinate them, or I couldn't have brought them across the border. So I don't know. I know that vets would disagree with me vehemently, and certainly your animal should be vaccinated if it's an outside animal. If you have a dog that goes outside or a cat that goes outside, they should be vaccinated against rabies. I'm not against all vaccination. I'm just saying that it should be mandatory. I do understand why it's mandatory for animals to have rabies vaccinations. I certainly understand that. I don't know what I stand for there. I didn't vaccinate mine because they were never outside. If I did have an outside animal, that would probably change that. I would definitely give them a rabies vaccination. But that's just how I feel. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying that that's how I feel, and until I'm educated otherwise, that's how it's liable that I would continue to feel that way. So anyway, let's go back. because there are more interesting things to cover. Let's look at this bizarre little piece of news. Okay. Oklahoma man facing jail time for overdue $5 movie rental. State wants its cut in fines. A man is facing jail time and hundreds of dollars in fines for forgetting to return a DVD he rented for $5 in 2014. Overreact much? Anyway, editors note, according to biblical law, the man would simply pay for the movie, late fees, and additional costs to the owner of the movie, and nothing to the state. There would be no jail time, but not in a corrupt system like we have. And it's just saying, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, if anyone sins and commits a breach of faith against the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security or through robbery, or if he has oppressed his neighbor or has found something lost and lied about, swearing falsely in any of all of the things that people do and sin thereby, if he has sinned and he has realized his guilt and will restore what he took by robbery or what he got by oppression, or the deposit that was committed to him, or the lost thing that he found, or anything about which he has sworn falsely, he shall restore it in full, and shall add a fifth to it, and give it to him to whom it belongs on the day he realizes his guilt. So that is according to biblical law, but certainly not according to our law. Apparently, Tulsa, Oklahoma, a man who never returned a copy of the movie Ted he rented for $5 from a local store in 2014 was contacted by police and threatened with jail time if he did not pay the hefty fine that he had accumulated over the last 4 years. Lonnie Perry said he vaguely remembers renting the movie, watching it, and then forgetting to return it. But he became homeless around that time, and he believes the DVD copy of Ted was just another one of the possessions he packed into a box when he moved to a neighboring town. The local store insisted that it tried to reach out to Perry multiple times, but when they could not contact him, they turned the case over to the Roger County District Attorney's Office and listed the DVD as stolen property that must be returned. The local news apparently had no trouble finding the man, and in an interview with ABC 8 in Tulsa, Perry said he was shocked when he received a letter from the DA notifying him that he could face jail time if he did not pay the $218.07 fee for the movie rental. The fact that is even more incredible is that out of the money Perry owes, the movie store will only receive a small portion, $19 for the movie and $25 for lost profits, while the DA will receive $174 as part of a state statute that deals with unreturned movies, according to the report. I just don't have that kind of money right off. I'll get it and I'll pay it. I'll do what I have to do. I just think it could have gone a different route, Perry said. I understand the video place having to do what they've got to do. There's other means of trying to get a hold of people without a warrant. In response to reports about the fines and jail time Perry was facing over a $5 movie rental, a local handyman company, Jeff of all trades, stepped in and paid all of the fines Perry owed. Unfortunately, this is not the first time an incident like this has happened. Around the time that Perry was renting his copy of Ted in 2014, a woman in Pickens County, South Carolina, was forced to spend the night in jail for failing to return the VHS copy of the movie Monster-in-Law that she rented in 2005. The same treatment is also applied to library books, and as the Free Thought Project has reported, a couple in Tecumseh, Michigan, was treated like criminals after their daughter rented a set of books from the local library and failed to turn them back in for 8 months. Although the books were eventually returned and the couple paid hundreds of dollars in late fees in an attempt to solve the matter, they were forced to appear in court in 2016, where they were both charged with larceny of rental equipment and faced up to 93 days in jail and more than $500 in fines, all for late library books. In yet another case, a mother in Victoria, Texas was notified in 2017 that she was also facing time in jail for late library books after she moved and did not receive any of the late notices from the library. She said she lost the books, but instead of simply facing a lost fee of $21.75, the mother of four was informed that the fines had accumulated and she now owes $748.98. And she could spend time in jail if she does not pay the ransom. While individuals who rent movies from stores and books from libraries do so with the agreement that they will return the product or face late fees, the idea that they would be forced to spend time in jail and to pay hundreds of dollars in fines raises serious questions about the purpose of the system. Is it really worth it to waste time, money, and resources looking for and prosecuting the mother who forgot to return her child's library book, or the homeless man who lost a $5 DVD rental, when there are violent crimes to be investigated? Well, you already know what I think. I think it is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard of. They're just criminalizing everything. It gets more money for the state, and of course our prison systems are run like businesses. So anyway, let's go back. Now here is another ludicrous item, but ludicrous for a whole other reason. Here we've got the so-called comedian Mishel Wolf, the same one that was so viciously attacked Sarah. Oh my gosh, her name just like flew out of my mind. You know, Sarah. Oh my gosh, I can't even believe that. Anyway, let's take a look at this. Maybe it'll come back to me if I'm not thinking about it. All right. Netflix, trashy non-comedian Mishel Wolf, God bless abortions. If you thought comedian Mishel Wolf wasn't all that funny when she was roasting White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, that's who I was trying to think about, and now I feel a little bit embarrassed for forgetting her name. But it is that time of night. Anyway, she was roasting White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders and making the media own its own vileness. You're certainly not to be amused by her salute to the murder of unborn babies that aired on Netflix. In its latest episode, The Break with Mishel Wolf saluted abortion and actually called on God to bless it. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for life at light and light for darkness, that puts bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. It's Isaiah 5:20. Yes, judgment is coming. Some people say abortion is killing a baby, said Wolf. It's not. It's stopping a baby from happening. It's like Back to the Future, and abortion is the DeLorean, and everyone loves DeLoreans. Okay. I do wonder if someone might break in on the set while cameras are rolling and actually show the bodies of babies that have been murdered while Wolf covers for the hitmen who do the dirty deeds, how she might react. Like many criminally minded Americans, Wolf may just laugh it off and make a sorry attempt at a joke about it. The woman isn't even funny. She is promoting a holocaust of the most helpless in our society. To demonstrate how not funny Wolf is, she said, and I know some people call themselves pro-life, but pro-life is a propaganda term that isn't real, like healthy ice cream and handsome testicles. Seriously, this is what passes for comedy these days? Speaking of propaganda, Ms. Wolf, the term pro-choice is most definitely propaganda. Pro-choice to do what? While those of the criminal mindset examine, it is that it is a choice of what to do to their bodies. It is the body of a child that is mutilated and discarded like a piece of meat. Anyone who has actually witnessed an abortion knows without a doubt that a person has been murdered. Just listen to former Texas Congressman Dr. Ron Paul or former Planned Parenthood Award winner Abby Johnson, who had 2 abortions. You'll understand that this is not comedy. This is horror beyond comprehension, and people are actually laughing at it. Here's a peek at the lawlessness of Mishel Wolf, and I am not going to show that. Here's what Wolf had to say. Abortion, I salute you. Women, if you need an abortion, get one. If you want an abortion, get one. If you're not pregnant but you think you eventually might be and want to order a future abortion, get one. If you're pregnant and you want to be pregnant, don't get one. It's up to you, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. It's actually a great deal. It's about $300. That's like 6 movie tickets. Movie tickets, a big deal. And women, don't forget, you have the power to give life, and men will try to control that. Don't let them. God bless abortions, and God bless America. No, Ms. Wolf, God is neither blessing abortions nor America, since we have strayed far from his law and are, in essence, spitting against heaven as a result. Remember the old adage about spitting into the wind? Keep that in mind, Mishel Wolf, because it won't be spit that you are reaping with your promotion of the shedding of innocent blood. I find it hard to believe that any human being could ask God to bless abortions. Actually makes me very sad. Okay, let's take a look at this one first, and then we will look at the last one. Come on, little hamsters. Now, I found this interesting. Not really interesting, but federal court rules TSA can abusively fondle your genitals with immunity. The TSA, whose job is supposedly fighting terrorism, is without doubt one of America's most corrupt and incompetent agencies. However, last year they apparently became so unsatisfied with the mere ability to strip search babies, remove colostomy bags, beat up blind cancer patients, and fondle your genitalia that they announced a more invasive physical pat-downs. The pat-downs, which TSA warned would probably prompt assault complaints with the police department because of their invasive nature, have been implemented, and now a federal court ruled that these complaints mean absolutely nothing because the TSA cannot be sued. As the Washington Post reports, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, which sits in Philadelphia, held the TSA officers enjoy sovereign immunity because despite their badges and titles as officers, they do not qualify as investigative or law enforcement officers who could be held legally responsive for abuses under the Federal Tort Claims Act. The court looked at the question of when a TSA search should prompt protection under the Fourth Amendment. The court ominously noted that TSA screeners are more like federal meat inspectors than cops. Indeed, anyone who's ever found themselves subject to the invasive nature of a TSA pat-down, yes, I have, knows just how much this agency likes to inspect meat. While this ruling highlights is the What this ruling highlights is the dehumanizing nature of the federal government, who likens human beings who wish to travel by airplane as meat to be inspected. We are sympathetic to the concerns this may raise as a matter of policy, particularly given the nature and frequency of TSO's contact with the flying public, the court stated. In a moment of rational thought, however, a single judge, Judge Thomas L. Ambro, dissented and aptly noted that the TSA are no different than cops conducting traffic stops and therefore should be held to the same degree of liability, which, as TFTP has reported at length, is not much, but at least they are not immune. As Washington Post reported, Ambro also noted that the majority's opinion would bar passengers from bringing legal claims even in the most extreme cases, such as when TSA officers at Denver International Airport were accused of manipulating security procedures so they could grope attractive male passengers. Their opinion leaves several plaintiffs without a remedy, even if a TSO assaults them wrongfully, detains them, or fabricates criminal charges against them, Ambro wrote. I do not believe this is what Congress intended. The court's decision stemmed from the case of Nadine Pellegrino, a business consultant from Florida who experienced the invasive and demeaning nature of the TSA firsthand. As NBC reports, according to court papers, Pellegrino has been randomly selected for additional screening at the Philadelphia airport before boarding a U.S. Airways flight to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Pellegrino, then 57, objected to the invasiveness of the search, but conditions deteriorated and she was later jailed for about 18 hours, the papers show. Criminal charges were filed and Pellegrino was acquitted at a March 2008 trial. Because the federal government grants itself sovereign immunity under the Tort Claims Act, the TSA, like all federal government employees, are shielded from civil and criminal liability except in very limited circumstances. The TSA, who has never stopped a terror attack and is unable to stop 95% of the tests against its tactics, gropes and molests children and adults alike, who unquestionably accept it. Now, the very small percentage of people who actually stand up to them will have no recourse. Now we know a potential reason why the TSA is putting together a watch list of those who criticize them. Once they snub out the last few people who value freedom, Americans more concerned with an ineffective facade of safety instead of individual liberty will be lining up to have their genitals fondled and groped so they can feel secure. Now, I used to fly quite often, and I have seen some things, not necessarily against me, although I feel that I was inappropriately groped. I guess probably anybody that has been groped by TSA feels that it's inappropriate, and I realize that. But it's very invasive, and I do understand why they're doing it. And I don't believe that all TSA officers are bad. But the point is that if you make it so that they are immune, they have immunity and they cannot be prosecuted, then if you do have a bad TSA officer who is taking advantage of his or her position to grope members of the same or the opposite sex, then that's not good. Yeah, I don't think that's a good thing. So, let's go back. I have one more thing to show you. I believe that's it, and it is. So, let's take a look at this. And that sound you just heard, now if I can replicate it, probably can't replicate it. It's my arm against the leather chair. Honestly, it is. It's the chair, dang it. Okay, now this is a little bit, let's just say disconcerting. Parasite-mare, the deadly parasitic worm that's set to invade Europe, and it lays its eggs inside human organs. Yeah. It is the second most deadly parasitic disease after malaria. And here's a picture of the cute little fellow. Coochie coochie coo. Yes, isn't he adorable? Not. Let's make it move. Let's see what this says. Well, apparently nothing.
Schistosomes live in freshwater lakes.
Well, I'm not going to play that. Just because I'm not. All right. It's the second most deadly parasitic disease. Only malaria is more lethal, and I cannot pronounce that. I don't know, also known as snail fever. Let's call it snail fever because that's a whole heck of a lot easier to pronounce. Could be set to invade Europe's shores. And here it is again. Let me just give you a nice little close-up of it. Not sure. Guess that's his head. His little mouth. Don't know what this is. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Around 25 to 30% of humans are currently infected with at least one parasitic worm species, writes Carl Hoffman, professor of parasitology at I can't pronounce that either. University for the Conversation. The diseases they cause can be devastating. Worm infections can lead to diverse and chronic conditions such as scarring of the eyes and blindness, swelling of extremities and immobility, blockage of digestion. This is why I should not do videos late at night. This right here. Because as I'm reading through this list, I start to laugh. Now, I do have this strange thing where sometimes if I go to a funeral, I have an overwhelming urge to laugh because I feel so overwhelmed with whatever that I laugh. And I don't know where that comes from, but I apologize. I am not laughing at this parasite. I'm really not. I don't know what I'm laughing at. I apologize. Anyway, blockage of digestion, malnutrition, anemia, and tiredness. They can also increase an individual's lack of developing cancer. They can also increase an individual's risk of developing cancer and AIDS. It's like once I've passed a certain time of night, there's no going back. I cannot pull it back together. And I think I have crossed that. Anyway, snail fever is parasitic disease caused by a parasitic worm, which would make sense, right? And that just looks too pristine to be, a harbinger of this parasitic worm. Tourists paddle in Corsica's Cavou River, where 6 people were infected in 2014. Now, this just doesn't look like a place that would ever infect you. It's just too beautiful. Okay. So this snail fever currently affects hundreds of millions of people each year, causing thousands of deaths. It's caused by flatworms, this schistosome flatworms. The infection occurs when people come into contact with a type of freshwater snail that produces the worms. These worms then penetrate the skin and live in the blood vessels surrounding the intestines or bladder of the individual. When the egg of these flatworms becomes trapped in human organs, they can cause inflammation, blindness, scarring, anemia, and ultimately death. Any eggs that make it into the digestive system will be released when the carrier defecates or urinates. If these then reach fresh water, they can hatch and the cycle begins again. While this snail fever was previously linked to impoverished parts of South America, sub-Saharan Africa, where water hygiene is limited, recent outbreaks were reported on the Mediterranean. In 2014, 6 people were infected after swimming in the Cavou River in Corsica. So I just thought that this was interesting. It's horrible, and I hope that they find a way to contain it. But according to Professor Hoffman, global travel and climate change could mean we see parasitic worms continuing to move into parts of Europe and North America. The long-term consequences of increased parasitic worm distributions are difficult to predict, but the harm that infection causes highlights the need for developing control strategies that can mitigate this 21st century threat to global health. Hoffman and his team are looking into ways to treat and prevent the spread of parasitic diseases. We are not at the stage of drug development, but we hope that learning more about the disruption of these proteins could ultimately save lives across the world, he wrote. Now, I don't know how many of you are into homeopathic things, but if this is a concern. And actually, most of us do have parasites. That's just a fact. Almost all of us have parasites of some sort in our body, but there are homeopathic ways to get rid of these. And if that is of interest to you, I could do a report on that sometime, or you could look it up yourself. There are ways of getting rid of parasites, and I know because I've spent time in the Central American rainforest and have had parasites and got rid of them naturally. So that can be done. We're just not told about that frequently because, drug companies want to make money. So anyway, I thought that I would bring that up because it's interesting, and I think that we all need to be aware of it. It's really actually not Q related, but it is interesting, and I thought that you guys might like to know about it. So that's it for tonight, and I'm going to call it a night because I'm starting to get extremely punch drunk. So I'm going to sign off for now. Hope you guys have a great night and sleep well, stay safe. I will come back tomorrow and post another video. I hope that Q posts tomorrow so we can have some interesting Q things to talk about. If not, I will come back with Q related news or something else that's equally as interesting. Good night.